Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this is the Talamanca Review. Took the day off yesterday. I don't know, didn't really have anything to say. Or I was just building up for this one, which is bigger and badder, or my coffee. Um, Let me ease into this, talk about my day. Um, yeah, it's just a typical day. I think I was up at 8:30, which is a bit late for me. I'm usually up at about 6:30, 7:30, but I sleep in. I mean, it's Sunday, right? What am I doing these days? I'm working on a book. Not my book. I edit books on the side. By the way, if you ever want to tell a story, like your family story or anything, I'm available to do that. I would have to charge for that. It would take about a month or 6 weeks, and it would be a, a series of interviews that I would do with you. And then from those interviews, I would write your life story, and it's kind of like a literary photo album. I don't know what it is about me, but I'm going backwards. you know, Everybody's just getting into the tech and everything and, doing all their photos on their phones and the cloud services and all that. And nothing is analog or tangible anymore. But I think there's a bit of a resurgence for these things. And I think that people having their life story told, and I think 4 generations. So you would go back to um, if you're in your 70s and you want the story told, we would start with your parents and then you and then your children and then your grandchildren, and there's your four generations. And I would go out and everything you told me, I would go and research. I would look at pictures. I would look at pictures from the period, and I would create a beautiful descriptive prose to describe the world you grew up in and your experiences growing up, and a beautiful memorial. And then you just use Amazon as your print service, right? So you don't sell the book unless you want to sell it to people in your family for $1.99 or something. But you put it up on Amazon and you just buy author's copies, and it's like depending on how big the book is, they're usually about $4 to print. So you print off like I don't know, like 100 of them for $400, and you pay your $40 for delivery, and you got a box of books and give them to your nieces, nephews, your children, your grandchildren, your family friends, your friends that are still alive who've known you your whole life. Yeah, I'm convinced there's a market for this. So if you're interested in something like that, give me a holler, and I'll do it for you. The book I'm working on now is a friend of mine. Not really a friend, a guy I've known a number of years, since about the early 2000s, 25 years. He's a bit older than me. He's in his 80s now. But he's one of these guys that is really into the whole money thing, and he's written this book on how usury and money is a big scam. And he's right. Um, but he's a day late and a dollar short. We're on to other things now, like the Great Taking and how the uniform commercial code's been changed and things like this. So he's a day late and a dollar short, but he's paying me to do it. It's a typeset and an edit job and the cover. So this is how I make my living, and and the grant writing and stuff like that, and increasingly a lot of subscriptions on Substack now. Thank you very much, those of you who subscribe. If you have subscribed to the Talamanca Review on Substack, I'm going to say this, okay? If you want um, Stardust Ranch, Light of Darkness, or The Devil in Us in Kindle format, like so you can read it on a tablet or your phone, I'll give you all three. And if you want the audio book of The Light of Darkness in MP3 format and the audio book of Stardust Ranch in MP3 format, I'll give you all that too. So you basically get all the books in written format, digital, not print. I personally think the book is the dope, right? I mean, the book is very special thing. So, you know, to physically hold a book, but that's just me. So if you have subscribed and you want those things, just send me an email or a message on Substack, and I'll set it up for you. I'll um I'll send you the 3 Kindle versions of the book, or what we call EPUBs, electronic publication, and then I'll send you the cloud folder where the audiobooks are, and you can download them to your phone or to your computer or what have you. And that will be my way of saying thank you for subscribing. So, and thank you. And like, um, those of you who don't subscribe, I mean, don't think twice about it, okay? I mean, I'm going to do what I'm going to do for free. I consider myself working for the creator, and there's a certain equity in it, so don't worry about it. You don't have to subscribe. I'm just very grateful for the people who do, and I want to show that. And so I think the subscription's about $80 a year, and you know, so the 3 books and the 2 audio books is, if you were to buy all that on Amazon, it would be in excess of $80. And I think obviously this goes without saying, but the books and the podcast go together. It's very difficult to understand what I'm talking about fully unless you've read the books, especially The Light of Darkness and The Devil in Us and Stardust Ranch. Okay, so there's my intro to today. Had a bunch of kids over today, about 6 of the nieces and nephews, and they're just in the little swimming pool here and having themselves a good old time. Um, um, yeah. So, where am I going to go today? I have actually a planned show. I've written down points to talk about because this podcast has been coming into me intuitively, like on butterfly wings, and I don't want to screw it up. Now, usually I just sit in front of a microphone and I start talking, but that I try it started coming in yesterday morning in meditation. And I went to do a podcast last night, and I did 30 minutes, 35 minutes, and then I threw it in the garbage, and I didn't publish it because there's a lot of moving parts in this one, so I want to get it right. I don't have a title yet. The title will come to me toward the end of the podcast, I suppose. Okay. Now, the first thing I want to go over is agency again. Okay. Now, let me make sure I'm using that word right, because I don't want to get it wrong. And it has agency definition. Let's see. So it's a noun, and it's a business or organization established to provide a particular service, typically one that involves organizing transactions between 2 other parties. Yeah. Number 2 is action or intervention, especially such as to produce a particular effect. That's the one I need. Okay. Let me see if there's a third one here. This is the lawful law definition. The office or function of an agent, and it goes back to medieval Latin, which is agent, doing, and um, agentia, English agent. Yeah. Okay. So this is what I mean when I say agency in context to this podcast, and generally the Talamanca Review when I use this word. Action or intervention, especially such as to produce a particular effect. Okay. Now this is important to understand. So I'm going to go over this again. I've gone over it on the Talamanca Review, but it's extremely important. So only human beings have agency over this world. Only human beings. And yet, many things other than human beings affect this reality. All right, let me repeat those 2 things again. For 3 things. Number 1 is the definition of agency. Action or intervention, especially such as to produce a particular effect. And the example they give, canals carved by the agency of running water. What an interesting example, eh? So only human beings have agency. Only human beings can produce effects in the world. Okay? Now, that's not universally true. Um, you've got weather, you've got the Earth's crust. But what my point is, you have to physically be here. This is what I mean. Okay? I'm not talking about earthquakes or cyclones, but the more you look at that stuff these days, that's definitely human agency, isn't it? Okay? So human beings have agency to affect this place. Okay? And simultaneously, more than human beings are affecting the earth. How's that possible? Well, it's possible because human beings are a being that is non-physical, and many human beings, especially now in the early part of the 21st century, are too weak to hold the space of their body, to hold the consciousness in physical form. The number of people being bullied, abused, bothered, obsessed, and outright possessed and influenced by entities and beings that are not in body, and that you can just go across the spectrum. Okay, that's everything. That's demonic, that's dead human beings, that's interdimensionals, that's extraterrestrials, that's things physically existent but not known to us, like inner earth. That is bidimensional beings, like uh, Bigfoot, like the duende up here. Okay? Oh, we had another duende event this afternoon. One of the youngsters, about 7 years old, went to the bathroom, and we had to come and get him. He was screaming. He said he saw a duende, and he did not know of the story about duendes at my house. It wasn't though it got into his head. He thought about it too much and scared himself. So they 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 like to fool around with the kids, but they always end up scaring the kids, right? Depending on if they're like below 7, they'll be okay. If they're over 7, that adult mind that is consecrated to the physical reality is starting to form, and they're going to get freaked out. So the rule of thumb is the younger the better. So I told him, his name's Brandon, my nephew. I said, "Hey Brandon, they're my friends. They're not going to hurt you, okay?" And he gave me a big smile, and he was okay. So there's a lot of things now, and while we're talking about agency, and we're talking about human beings being the only agents of change on the planet, I mean everything else just does what it's supposed to do. But the direction of the world, the direction of human societies, the literature, the inventions, the technology, the music, everything is going to come through certain human agency. And there's a tremendous competition to influence or usurp that human agency through the human being. Okay? It's another way of looking at the Abrahamic system of the Debuk in Judaism, the daemon in Christianity, the jinn in Islam. These are all forms of disincarnate beings that all have a vested interest in speaking to or using the agency of human beings to affect the world. Okay? And it goes much bigger than that, too. But the Talamanca Review doesn't need to cover everything to do with agency, right? I just don't. It's not my place. I don't have to do that. So you're responsible for you. Okay? You are responsible for you. Um And anything that comes through you comes through your body and affects the world. To be honest with you, I haven't contemplated this. I haven't put any real inner concentration on this, but now that I'm asking the question aloud, I should get the answer relatively soon. But the question is, to what degree are you liable for that? Okay? To what degree are you liable for that? It's interesting because in law, if someone is perceived to be mentally ill, they can be absolved of a crime. They won't be let free. They'll go to a psychiatric hospital rather than a prison, but they cannot be held liable for the crime because they're, and I quote, mentally ill. It's interesting that I don't think the court system has ever dealt with possession, right? Let me ask that question. You never know, right? I mean, Google knows everything now. Wonder if I should use DeepSeek. No, let me just go with Google. Has anybody ever been found not liable for a crime by demonic possession? No. Demonic possession has never been accepted as a valid legal defense resulting in a finding of not liable for a crime in the United States, though it has been used as a defense in the past, most notably in the Devil Made Me Do It case, which did not result in the defendant being found not liable. Now, this is interesting, so let's read this. So, the most famous example of demonic possession being used as a defense is the 1981 case of Arne Cheyenne Johnson, where his defense lawyer argued that he was possessed by a demon when he killed his landlord, Alan Bono. And there was the legal rejection. The judge in that case ruled that demonic possession was not a legally acceptable defense, and he would not permit any evidence related to possession. You know why, right? Could you imagine the floodgate that would open in the court system? Could you imagine all the pastors going to court and testifying as expert witnesses like psychiatrists? By the way, that's a very interesting thing that the only people accepted as experts about state of mind are psychologists and psychiatrists in a court of law. I mean, you could be anybody. You could be Sadhguru, and they won't let you speak to consciousness or state of mind in a court of law because they're not papered. And this is how the academic system works with the legal system. It's a series of bonds and titles which create a net of liability maintenance. But it's all coming apart now. It's not going to survive the 21st century. So Johnson was ultimately convicted of manslaughter and served 5 years of a 10 to 20-year sentence. And there was no legal basis for the defense. There are no provisions in U.S. law that cover demonic possession as a defense for any crime. But mental illness, yes. Now we know from Jerry Marzensky, you can look him up. Donnie over at Spellbreakers has done a few interviews with Jerry Marzensky. I interviewed him way back in 2018 when I was at Revolution Radio. I don't think he'd even written his book back then. But he was a psychiatric counselor at a maximum security prison, and he came to realize that schizophrenia is entity possession and has written papers on it. Now, he's been laughed out of the psychiatric field, but that's how they all make their money. You know, you know that thing about science, trust the science, and then everybody pushing back on that was saying, well, yeah, but science is purchased. So that, we don't know what the science is on anything if nobody's willing to fund the experiments. Because scientists, like everybody else, they need to eat, they need to feed their children, they need to pay private school fees, they need to pay league fees for hockey, baseball, all of these sorts of things, right? So how are you going to do it? Um, so they're never going to let this open, okay? Anyways, I just wanted to go down that road to sort of cross my T's and dot my I's, so to speak, okay? So only human beings have agency here. But that agency can be compromised or influenced. That's why each and every one of us is completely and utterly responsible for our consciousness. Now, I say this a lot now. I say it to a lot of people, okay? When I started meditating in 1983 at the age of 17, it was a lifestyle choice. It was being eccentric. Oh, there, Bruce meditates. My friends in Ottawa I grew up with. Oh, Bruce started meditating. It was just like the weirdest possible thing you could do. But it was perceived as lifestyle. It's like what is lifestyle? Well, you take up downhill skiing. On the weekends in the winter, you go skiing. It's a lifestyle choice. And meditation gives something to your life. It's a lifestyle choice, right? That was in 83. I would say in 2025, meditation and spiritual practice is as important as going to the gym or martial arts training now. That's how intense the psycho-spiritual field is now in terms of attacks on consciousness. And it's just going to get worse now. And I also believe the vaccine was created to compromise the connection with spirit. So you're going to be more susceptible to being taken over, okay? More susceptible. So you got to take care of that. You are responsible for your consciousness because in some measure you are responsible for everything that is done through the body. The body is your responsibility. The body is animated by a spirit. If you, through spiritual weakness or consistent bad behavior that weakens you, become influenced by negative spirits, then you are responsible for what the body does, what happens through the body and through the mind. Okay, even if it wasn't you that did it. Mental illness, yes. Demonic possession, no. Okay. Now, what is this idea of developing yourself? What do I mean by that? Okay. Now, I'm going to hit this theme again, and I've hit this theme before, but I think there's a number of my listeners that need to hear this, and I know this from communicating with many of you off air. Spiritual tourism is not spiritual practice. Okay? Going to do Ibogaine is not spiritual practice. It's convincing yourself at a mental level that you live in a multidimensional reality through a profound chemical experience that liberates consciousness from the strict confines of sense and mind in a deliberate and definitive way that can't be denied. Ergo, you have a multidimensional experience. Ergo, you are not meditating or doing spiritual practice in faith anymore. You are doing it in knowledge that you are attempting to naturally and organically open up your multidimensional consciousness. And it's achieved through practice. Okay? I don't know how many seminars people can go to. Oh, I have a subscription to Gaia. I'm spiritual. You think that fucking Bashar? He can't do anything for you. Okay? Now, this new age horseshit and everything going on is all part of an elaborate distraction. Okay? I know some people think we're in a spiritual renaissance. Oh, there's a great spiritual renaissance happening. Have you heard so and so talk? He's a master Akashic record reader. Have you heard so and so talk? He's channeling a collective of beings that are 50 million years old. That's not spiritual practice. Going and listening to Joe Weider talk about lifting weights is not lifting weights. Your body is not going to be changed. Your consciousness, your awareness of yourself as soul, your ability to understand what spirit is not going to be affected by listening to somebody channel. Okay? Now, this has all been done in a very deliberate way. Because the game is so important now. Okay? The game is so important now. Every little distraction out there. Okay? Every little distraction. I mean, for crying out loud, even Cliff High advocates meditation. Even Courtney Brown and the Remote Viewing Institute, Farsight, advocate meditation. Meditation is the ultimate practice of consciousness governance, awareness, subtlety of perception, and understanding your inner landscape so that you can understand what parts of your consciousness are already awakened, meaning that it's object data coming into you from wherever. Could be your ancestors, your guides, your protectors, angelic, extraterrestrial, higher order, ascended masters. But it comes in as objective data. Well, what's objective? Well, that's a vape. That is an objective fact. Watch. I just vaped, and I was able to vape because that's a vape. We can all agree that that's an objective fact, right? Okay. Something pops into your head, okay? And you think, well, that's just, what is that? I don't know what that is. Why did I just see a Philly cheesesteak from Arby's in my imagination? Well, maybe I'm hungry, you know, if you eat that kind of shit to begin with. Maybe I'm hungry. Maybe I'm this. Maybe I'm that. Okay. But in that engagement with the picture in your head, there's no mandate to see that as object. Okay. Now, if you're sitting around on your couch and you see an Arby's Philly cheesesteak in your head, and then 2 minutes later your front door knocks and somebody's come to visit you and say, hey, I brought you an Arby's Philly cheesesteak, then you go, wow, that was really a coincidence. And then you have one of those moments. But again, that's not fully consolidating the awakened imagination. But that's the end of my example chain, because I can't go any further, because you have to experience it yourself. But you will get to a point with your consciousness where you will be able to get object data. Okay? Just like you do reading a book. Now, some people may say, well, hey, why would you want to do that? You know, shouldn't you be studying chemical engineering or structural engineering or math or science? You know, we have all this body of object data already. Um, you know, we need people to fill these roles in society. Why are you wasting your time with this frivolous pastime of meditating and trying to create an awakened imagination? Well, witness 2025, witness what's going on. And that's why. Because it's a martial art now. Okay? And because we're so far off the mark now in terms of what we discuss publicly as being real, because the spiritual voice has been silenced. Okay? Most of the things we talk about on the Talamanca Review, I know, again, from speaking to a lot of you off air, that you all have your own experiences. And many of you have been having experiences your whole lives. Maybe you haven't been able to make any understanding or greater meaning of it all, but you're definitely having these experiences, okay? And that's why, in some measure, you gravitate toward the Talamanca Review, because this is a place people come to talk about experiential consciousness, awakened imagination, the journey to enlightenment, okay? And I have to say that in the West, that voice is completely absent now, except for the deliberately inserted nonsensical distraction of channeling ancient history, reinterpreting the Bible based on this alien data, all of this shit. But it's not spiritual, it's mental. And they sell it, which is disgusting. Spiritual teaching should not be sold, but they do. Every friggin' some of these YouTube channels now, they got like 1 million+ subscribers. You know, Next Level Soul podcast and stuff like that. And they're good. You know, I watch it once in a while for not I never watched a whole episode, but every once in a while I'll tune in for 15 or 20 minutes. Okay? But it doesn't matter because it's somebody else's experience. And all of that stuff, the ayahuasca, the ibogaine, the psilocybins, listening to Gaia, listening to Next Level Soul podcast, that is all you're doing is trying to get the discipline to have your own experiences through spiritual practice. Like these things don't just happen. They happen to people who practice. Okay? That's why if you go into a Buddhist monastery and you meditate for a decade, you're going to have experiences. It's tried and true. Okay? Which is completely different than the Abrahamic system. Well, which, let's be honest, the Abrahamic system is a soul buying contract system because you believe somebody else is going to take care of your soul, a rabbi, a priest, and a mom, and you believe you can be forgiven for anything, and that's not true. And then you just go ahead and live your life without doing any spiritual practice. But of the three religions listed, the most disciplined in practice is, in fact, the Islamic world. Okay, they are very disciplined in their 5 times a day of prayer, their 40-day Ramadan fast, which is an extremely difficult fast, by the way. While the sun's up, you cannot drink water or eat any food. You can eat when the sun is down, and you can drink water when the sun is down, but you got to go the whole day. You got to go the whole day without a sip of water. If you think that's easy, try it sometime. Okay? So hats off to the Muslim world. They are the most serious practitioners in the Abrahamic world. Okay? So the channeling is a big distraction. Okay? Now, let's circle back. So you got distraction, and then you've got agency taking over human bodies. You've got non-physical beings and entities using the body for agency and for effect on the physical plane. This we know for sure is going on. I would say it's the case with most of the world's leaders now. Okay? If you think Justin Trudeau is a sitting and souled being in a body, you're fucking crazy. And you don't see anything. Now, again, societal standards would have you believe it's me that's crazy. But if you've been listening to me a while, if you've read my books, you know that's not true. Okay? You know I'm telling you the truth. And if you don't know, you can do your spiritual practice until you do know. Those are not human beings governing us. Okay? Those are not human beings. And this guy Carney, he's not a human being either. Jeffrey Epstein, not a human being. Ghislaine Maxwell, not a human being. Their personalities may sit in the body, but they are, because of their transgressions, they are open to anything to come in and use them, especially at that negative frequency because they're so negative. And then that doesn't frighten them. They actually enjoy commiserating with these beings. Okay? Otherwise, they wouldn't behave the way they behave. So now I'm going to go back to holy sites are nonsense, and I'm going to revisit what I talked about in that podcast. Now, what I meant by that is a holy site cannot give you any spiritual direction. It cannot do anything for you spiritually. The only thing that can help you spiritually is spiritual practice. It's like, I don't know how many times I can say the same thing. Okay? You want to play the violin? You got to practice the violin. You want to play the piano? You got to practice the piano. You want to play junior A hockey? You've got to skate for 3,000, 4,000 hours when you're 4 or 5 years old till you're 12 or 14. To master ice skating and handling a hockey stick and handling a puck, you got to practice. You want to be a technical writer like I do, a grant writer? You got to write for years and decades to get good at it. You want to write a book? You got to write every day for a number of years, and then you have to have an innate talent to be good at it. Practice, 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 practice. Why do we think that the spiritual would be any different than anything else in the template down here? Where did we allow ourselves to believe that a belief could replace a practice? Or why are we any less scientific about consciousness and spirituality than we are with anything else? Physics, math, biology? It should be scientific. Okay? You should be doing your practice and keeping a notebook and noting everything that happens in your consciousness, in your dreams, once you start meditating. And then you should be comparing that with the journals and poetry and discourses left by masters. Okay? Now I'm speaking specifically of the pursuit of God here, where God may not exist as a being, but exists as a state of consciousness. And God would be, as a state of consciousness, the point at which your individuality completely dissolves and merges into everything. Okay, you can no longer distinguish between yourself and the energy fields around you, the physical, the astral, the causal, and the mental. You can't distinguish anymore. Okay? And that's what the journey is. Now, here's something I forgot to mention in the holy sites are nonsense. Okay? Now, I'm not redacting anything I said in that podcast. Holy sites are nonsense for spiritual development. And if you've been listening to the Talamanca review for a while, you should have an understanding of what I mean by spiritual development. It's the ability basically to contain higher and higher frequency and vibration and ultimately ground love inside you. But it's a different love. It's not like the love of your pets, the love of your children, the love of your wife. Love is love. It's the same thing, but it's like, I don't know how to say it any more refined than this. It's just different. This is a love that conquers fear. You have no fear of dying. This is a love that answers questions you didn't even ask. And when you try to show your work, how you came to the answer, there's no line, there's no logic, there's no algebra, there's no trigonometry, there's no calculus. And yet you know you're right. And you don't even know how you know. That's spiritual consciousness. Okay? And we've been beating it out of our public discourse for about 150 years. Since about 1875. This was the last big turning. Whether that was Tartaria, I really don't give a shit. And I mean, that's just a jerk off thing to investigate. Okay, no offense to people who get all caught up in that stuff, but what's the point in knowing? How better off as a living being are you for knowing? I can tell you this, that these cycles have been going for millions of years. You think Atlantis 12,500, 600 years ago, rising and falling, that's it? Oh, Graham Hancock has documented this and that's it? No. I read because I'm a geek, I read the Falun Gong Bible years ago, like about 20 years ago. I got my hands on it from a Falun Gong practitioner in Canada, and I read it. And that dude is a master of the causal plane. Okay, he has a very good relationship with time, and there's a lot of these time voices coming out now, like Matthias de Stefano on Gaia, like Andrew Bartzis, and like I think his name is Li Fei Long, the Falun Gong practitioner. Okay, he says this rising and falling thing, like Atlantis, like what we're in now, and I'm not talking minor rises and falls, like a regional empire like the Turks, what we call the Ottomans, or the Romans, or the French under Napoleon, or the Anglo-American Empire since the British Navy beat the Spaniards. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the whole planet rising to a certain point, collapsing and losing everything, like the Atlantis story, or like the story of the flood. Okay? The Falun Gong guy says that has happened 87 times on this planet. So we're basically on a hamster wheel. Okay? And the human race, it seems as though it was created collectively to do belly flops. Okay, there's only so far you're going to go collectively. What that means is you should not fully invest yourself in the collective. You should respect the collective. The collective built this computer I'm talking to you on. I couldn't have done that on my own. I couldn't have figured it out, put the materials together. So the collective society of the West from World War II onwards brought us the home computer, and I'm grateful for that. And I don't disrespect the collective, but I don't put my faith in the collective to save me as a living spiritual being or to instruct me as a spiritual being. That's my responsibility, just as it's your responsibility to do the same thing for yourself. You see what I'm saying? All right, getting back on track. A temple can contain forces that influence human being to have agency in the world. There, I said it. Okay? So you take the example of the Hindu temples, especially the lingams. Okay? Let me get you a definition of that. How they built a lingam. What is a Hindu lingam in a temple? In a Hindu temple, a lingam is a cylindrical, often stone symbol representing the god Shiva and revered as an emblem of generative and destructive power, often placed within a yoni, feminine counterpart. They don't tell. Let me ask. What is the purpose of a linga in a Hindu temple? In Hindu temples, a lingam, also spelled linga, serves as a symbolic representation of the god Shiva and is. Come on, that's the exact same thing you just gave me, you fucking idiots. Um, So, by under generative power, it's considered an emblem of Shiva's masculine energy with the universe's generative power. Focal point of worship. In Shiva temples, the lingam is often placed at the center and serves as a focal point for worship. Masculine and feminine energies. The lingam is often depicted with a circular base representing Shakti, the feminine aspect of the divine, and is seen as a symbol of the union of Shiva and Shakti. Cosmic pillar. The lingam is sometimes viewed as a cosmic pillar. Okay, anyways, I know what it does. A lingam is used if somebody is very imbalanced and bothered. Basically, they've lost control over their body. They've lost control over their agency in the world. You can sit them in front of a lingam for like 40 minutes and it'll rebalance them. It'll depossess them. Okay? Very interesting. Okay? So a temple can have certain effects and affect agency. Okay? Now, it goes deeper than that, though. A temple can also be like a corpus, like a body for a spirit. Okay? Now, especially if the temple is built that way. Now, by the way, this is the secret of all the ancient megalithic structures. Okay? They talk about megalithic structures being active or dormant. Okay? Now, one of the places in the world where they still have active megalithic structures, let me define that too, because you got to do it. It's part of the legwork of a podcast, right? It's not all fun and games. What is a megalithic structure? Is a large prehistoric stone structure often consisting of multiple stones used as a monument, burial places, or sanctuaries by ancient communities. The term megalith comes from the Greek words mega, large, and lithos, stone. Um, okay. Now, in the past, human consciousness had a much better understanding of the first two dimensions. Okay? And that means the astral and the physical. And that means that they could build structures that could invite things in from the other side. Like the temple came to be a kind of a corpus for a spirit. Okay? There's a very important concept to understand. Now, what would be the effects of that? Well, in an active megalithic structure or an active ancient temple structure like the ones in Romania, the stones around the temple Grow. Have you ever heard of that before? Stones growing. And I don't mean like 1.6 millimeters over 100 years. Okay? I mean they grow. Like you come back in 5 years and a stone that was this big is now this big. Okay? Now they know all this stuff. They being they who run this world. They don't tell us this stuff. Because anything to do with the spiritual reality has been completely, or the multidimensional reality, I don't even have to go so high and mighty as spiritual. Anything to do with the multidimensional reality has been obfuscated from us in the last 140, 150 years. Unless it involves nonsensical stuff like Stephen King trying to scare us. I'm pretty sure I could scare Stephen King if we had a pot of coffee around a fire up here and we spoke for 3 hours. I think old Stephen would leave pretty damaged. He's made hundreds of millions of dollars scaring people. And I was talking about that today with Bob, that, like the devil in us and the light of darkness, when you understand what's being written, are truly, truly terrifying books. Okay? Because they're real. And you sell, I don't know, maybe 1,500 copies of each book. And then some fucking assjack from Maine, who's barely literate, can go out and write a book about a fucking clown living in a sewer and sell 1,000,000 copies. Right? That's agency, by the way. So Stephen King is being used by something non-physical to have agency, to affect the world. That's why his reach is so big. Okay? The truer your message in the early part of the 21st century, the less people who are going to listen to you. The more you are in alignment with the agency coming in or what's coming in from the other side, the more you are working with them, consciously or unconsciously, because I am not suggesting that this is done consciously. But the more you are working with them, the greater your reach is going to be. And Stephen King is meant to scare people without any resolution to the fear, without any spiritual context to dissipate the fear, because the fear is what's being harvested. You understand? Okay. So a temple is a corpus of sorts, a body for a spirit. We have these organic bodies which a soul can come into. A temple can't house a soul, okay? But it can house various spiritual echoes, shadows, and essences, especially on the astral, okay? So when you go into an old church, if you've ever gone on a trip to Europe and you go into a 500-year-old church or something, that church was built to hold something, and it's not something good. Most of these old churches in Europe and North America, they have ossuaries underneath them. They have ornamental bone structure art of dead human bodies underneath them. Ossuaries. Okay? What's going on with the churches are not what you think they are. Nothing based. Let me just be dramatic here for a moment. Nothing is what you think it is. Okay? Nothing is what you think it is. You've been lied to about everything. And the reason they don't want you thinking multidimensionally is they don't want you understanding what it is that they're trying to do. That's why there's so many distractions now. That's why nobody can really get anything going on. That's why everything is bullshit now. They don't want you to know what's going on. They don't want you to know. It's a form of warfare. And that's why they make all these stupid movies, with the great hero like John Wick. That's why morons like Andrew Tate and Joe Rogan appeal to little lost men who don't know what being a real man is. Being a real man is serving God. Okay? It's not going to the gym and trying to look 35 when you're 57 like fucking Joe Rogan. Or smoking a cigar and pimping women from Romania like Andrew Tate and his fucking punk brother. That's not being a man. But they don't want you to know that. That's why those fucking idiots are useful. and they make it look like they came in under controversy. Nothing comes in under controversy and reaches many people. It's a false heroic narrative. We are locked in a loop of bullshit, and they're doing it on purpose because of what they're trying to do. Now, this is part one. I have to start tonight. I'm only about 30% into what I wanted to do tonight based on my notes. And I've already hit my 50 minutes, so I got to stop. But I will give you a hint about what this is about and what's coming tomorrow, and I might need 3 podcasts to do this. The title of this podcast is The Womb Inseminated by Solomon. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review.